Remain standing for the reading of our gospel. It comes to us from John 15, verses 1 through 17. This is my commandment, that you love one another as I have loved you. No one has greater love than this, to lay down one's life for one's friend. You are my friends if you do what I command you. I do not call you servants any longer, because the servant does not know what the master is doing. But I have called you friends because I have made known to everything that I have heard from my Father. You did not choose me, but I chose you. And I appointed you to go and bear fruit, fruit that will last, so that the Father will give you whatever you ask him in my name. I am giving you these commands so that you may love one another. The word of God for you, the people of God.
Thanks be to God.
Amen. Today we honor moms. We honor both the living and we honor also the dead. Some are here and can see your face. Some of them may be far away, can only hear your voice or enjoy some flowers that you've sent and maybe a card. Not everyone can be a mom. It may be from some physical issue. It may be an emotional issue. For others, it might be time. It might be energy. Finances may be an insurmountable hurdle to climb over. Those things have not completely stopped some, however, from being mothers. They simply became a mother to not only their children, but they became mothers to our children and other people's children. I've had several mothers who had no children of their own in my life, and I bet you do too. Some were not part of the Phillips gene pool, thankfully. They simply adopted me when I really needed to be adopted. A couple of them were teachers. One was a neighbor. One was a relative. One was a mother of a friend. And yes, one was even my mother-in-law, believe that or not. If but for the briefest of moments, as Big Tom said, we've all had a mother in our life. And at that time, our mother was the most important person in the world, if nothing but that she gave us life. Now, I ask you a question. And I'm going to ask that you raise your hand and be honest about it. Because, we're supposed to be honest here before the Lord, aren't we? Well, we're supposed to be honest everywhere before the Lord, aren't we? How many of you had mothers that were absolutely, completely, without question, perfect? They're all deceased, aren't they? Those of you who did not raise your hand, your mother was a lot like my mother. She was not perfect. Therefore, when I think of my mother, I allow death to filter out the insignificant. I allow the death push away the things that were negative. I don't remember as often the bipolar depression. I don't remember the animosity she had towards things and places. I don't remember her suspicion of people. Instead, I remember this woman who was a beautiful person. I remember her artistic side. I remember her beautiful voice when she sang. I remember all those positive things that encapsulated her heart and her mind. Now, some of you had moms who made great sacrifices on your behalf. We are profoundly grateful for that. So today we honor those moms as well. This is their day. Because it's not easy being a mom, is it? How many of you think motherhood is easy? Raise your hand this time. No, it's difficult. Too close, you hover and smother, and in the end create an adult who is immature and insecure and cannot make a decision for themselves. Or you're too far away and you're emotionally detached, and you create an adult that is rigid with emotional instability and filled with aggression. No, motherhood is difficult. It's not an easy chore. It's not an easy task. Now, I read this and I got a little chuckle out of it, and I want to share it with you. It's about mothers of famous people in history and what they would have said to their child. Mona Lisa's mother. After all that money your father and I spent on braces, and that's the biggest smile you could give. Humpty Dumpty's mother. Humpty, I told you once, and I've told you a dozen times, I've told you never to sit on that wall, but would you listen to me? No. Christopher Columbus's mother. I don't care what you discovered, you could at least written one time. And Michelangelo's mother. Mike, why can't you paint on walls like all your other friends? Napoleon's mother. All right, Napoleon. If you're hiding your report card in there, pull it out now. And then there's Jonah's mother. That's a nice story, Jonah. But now tell me where you really been for the last 3 days. No, it's not easy being a mom. If it were easy, dads could do it. Now, I always find it interesting when Mom's Day falls every 3 years. It lands on this text before us this morning. And it goes like this. I'm going to repeat it. As the Father has loved me, so I have loved you. Now remain in my love. If you keep my commands, you will remain in my love. Now listen to that. If you keep my commands, you will remain in my love, just as I have kept my Father's command and remain in his love. I have told you this so that my joy may be in you and that your joy may be complete. My command is this: love each other as I have loved you. Now, you're mature enough in the faith to know that God does not have gender. God is spirit. And we talk about God as father and mother, male and female, simply to capture characteristics of an infinite God with a finite mind, our finite mind. So we discuss the attributes and characteristics of God with gender language. But if we go back and we substitute God in places with mother, it gets really clear the strong attributes of God, what the strongest attribute of God is. As my mother has loved me, so I have loved you. Now remain in my love, and if you keep my commands, you will remain in my love, just as I have kept my mother's commands and remain in her love. Let's begin there. We can love, and we love, simply because God has loved us first. And that's the message of this day. And in this passage, Jesus goes beyond the golden rule. We're okay with the golden rule. I'm going to love you as much as I love myself. We're okay with that. We never fulfill it, but we're okay with it. There's balance in those words. Don't love yourself more than others. Love others at least as much as you love yourself. However, in this passage before us this morning, Jesus trumps the golden rule. We're not simply to love our neighbor as we love ourselves. We're to love our neighbor as Jesus has loved us. That's different. And that's a harder standard to keep. You see, our own human love is always conditional. Always. It's transient. It's selective. Today we may love somebody, but tomorrow, because they did something, said something, acted a certain way, we stop loving them. Not so with God. Tomorrow we stop loving simply the lovable because they become the unlovable, perhaps because they've done an unlovable act. But then we withdraw our love and we feel wronged. When we feel wronged and when we feel cheated. And suddenly love is replaced with another emotion. What is it usually? Anger? Suspicion? Hostility? Animosity? Yeah, when love is pulled back, there's always a vacuum. And in that vacuum comes negative energy and negative emotion. Just as damning, often we only love those people who are like us, who share our background, who have a similar status, our values, the talented, the gifted, the dressed appropriately, those who love the same people as we love and want to be around the same people that we are around. Jesus' love, on the other hand, is not just for select groups, not just for select individuals. Jesus' love is for the entirety, the whole, regardless. And it's sacrificial. A young lady was a writer for a magazine, and Valentine's Day was approaching, and her editor asked her to write a piece about love, write a poem about love. But before she was to write, he asked her this question: tell me what you think love is. And she said, as she got really starry-eyed, it's looking upon a lily pond with the one closest to your heart by the light of the moon while the lilies are in full bloom. Stop, the editor said. Just stop it. Let me tell you what love is. Love is getting out of a warm bed on a cold winter's night and filling hot water bottles for sick children. Love is not filling your plate with your food, but giving it to your child. That sounds like the voice of experience to me, doesn't it, you? Her editor was right. Real love is sacrificial, even though we may not feel we are sacrificing anything at the time. None of us, if we are healthy emotionally, love our children as we love ourselves. We love them far more than we love ourselves. The golden rule is not applicable to a parent. We're not going to balance the love thing. We're always going to love them more. Our love can never measure up to agape love. God's love, of course, because we are mere mortals, but it does approximate that love. We strive to love others as God has loved us. We love them far more than we love ourselves. And I think that's the characteristic of a powerful mom. When we analyze their character, the best moms, we find that they are willing to give more than they expect to ever receive back. They are selfless. But here's the real test of Christian love, I think. Can we love all God's children with a love that approximates the love we have for our own children? In other words, can I love your child like I love my own? Can I love the children of this world like I love your children? Can I love those who are closest to me like I would love those furthest from me, or the ones furthest from me like the ones that are closest to me? Can we love our enemy as Jesus called us to do? Can we love those who abuse us and spitefully use us? Can we love the mean-spirited and the hostile? Can we love the dishonest? Can we love those of another race? Can we love those of a different sexual orientation? Can we love those who are trying to sneak across our border for a better way of life? Can we? Not just love with words, but can we love them with our deeds? Not just with a Hallmark card, but with sacrifice, with selflessness. That's what Christ is asking us to do in this text. Love others as He loves us. Wow! That's hard. One morning in 2012 in Winnipeg, Manitoba, a city transit bus driver named Chris Double D, he was 38 years old, and he made an unscheduled stop along his route. And the passengers all watched him as he got off the bus, and he approached a man on the sidewalk who had no shoes. He was barefoot. And the driver, Doubleday, asked him, "Do you have any shoes? Did you misplace your shoes? Or are you going to go back and get your shoes?" And he said, "No, I don't have any. I haven't had any for some time." And the driver took off his shoes and not only handed them to this shoeless man, but he sat down on the sidewalk beside him, took his socks off and put them on his feet, and then took his shoes and put them on his feet, and then tied the shoelaces. A passenger asked him why he'd done that. And Double D explained that he had seen the man standing there before and just couldn't bear the thought that that man had no shoes. Gee, we say, that's the kind of thing Jesus would do. Well, guess what, my friends? That's the kind of thing Jesus would expect us to do as well. Being sons and daughters. After 2 years of Christian history, that shouldn't be such a radical thought, but I think it is. We get shocked by it every time we hear it. We claim to follow Jesus, but we have very feebly sought to live in our own standard of love, rather than the standard that Jesus expects of us. There was a story in Reader's Digest about a man who cried 3 times, and his daughter wrote the story. And she said the first time she saw her dad cry was when she was 7. His mother, her grandmother, died, and he stood at the edge of the grave, and he wept for her. And the second time she saw him cry was at the airport when her brother left for Vietnam. And the third time was when her mother was an Alzheimer's patient in a nursing home. And her dad would go 3 times a day just to feed her and visit with her. And then he broke his foot. And for 6 weeks he couldn't go to feed her and visit with her. And on the day he got to go back 6 weeks later, he went in, and his wife looked up at him and she smiled and she said, "Daddy." And he leaned over and he kissed her. And he began to cry. And his daughter asked him, "Why are you crying?" He said, "I was afraid she wouldn't remember me." But she does. Some of you understand those kinds of tears. We know a little bit of what it means to love as Jesus loved. We love those who are closest like that. The question, though, remains, can we enlarge that circle of love and love others that profoundly? That's what Christ is asking us to do. There was a dog. You know, dogs get into our psyche. They get into our families. They become family. We have a dog named Harper. She's a little beagle. And she's my best bud. Okay? I go outside, she goes outside. I get something to eat, she gets something to eat. We know she follows every little step I have. Now, Harper thinks she's the center of the Phillips world, and I'm not going to tell her any different. And I don't want you to tell her any different either. But there was a dog, and the owner would feed him, and he would wolf it down. But there came a time when the dog stopped eating all of his food, and he would just pick up a bone and leave, and wouldn't come back for a long period of time. And then he would come back, and he seemed satisfied. And this went on for some time. So the owner of the dog decided to follow his dog into the back alley or into the woods. And he found out that his dog was taking bones and treats to another dog that had been wounded. The dog couldn't get up. And this dog was taking food to that other dog. Now remember now, this is a dog. It hadn't been to Sunday school. It hadn't heard a powerful sermon on love. But it was acting lovingly. It was doing what you and I sometimes find it difficult to do. Jesus gives us two commands in this passage. The first is to remain in His love. And how do we do that? By doing what He said to do. Doing what He said to do. And secondly, we're to love each other as He has loved us. And the command is linked to the first, which is to remain in God's love. When we remain in God's love, that love will motivate us to love other people. And folks, if we're not loving other people, then the question remains, are we in God's love? We have to ask ourselves. If we're having a difficult time to love others, we need to question where we are spiritually. Mark Buchanan, in his book, Hidden in Plain Sight, tells about a time a number of years ago when he was struggling with his attitude towards another person. And he had gotten angry with this man over a business deal. And the man, you know how it is, we get upset over something little, and then we add to it, and we build it up, we make it bigger. And something that was so minute that upset him ends up becoming something he's angry over. He's bitter. He wants to, he's showing all kinds of animosity towards this other person. And it's starting to capture his entire life. It's coloring his characteristics, or his character. It's coloring his view, not only of himself, but other people. And then one day his son comes home who missed a ball on a free kick in a soccer game. And his team lost. And the son comes in and he's crying. And the dad says, "Son, what's happened?" And the son explains. And the dad says, "That's okay. You can't block all of them." And the son said, "But my teammates think I should have. My teammates told me I needed to quit playing soccer, told me I was the best player on the other team. And one even suggests I ought to do something bad to myself because I missed that ball." Well, you can imagine. Dad got angrier. He's already filled with animosity, so he gets even angry when he hears this about his son. So he goes into the bedroom, gets his shoes on, gets his jacket on. He's going to go down there and he's going to tell this coach off. He's going to tell this team off. He's going to defend his son. And then Mark hears these words. "Mark, where are you going?" "To straighten this matter out, Lord," Mark answered. "No one treats my son that way." And God says, "You have a father's heart, Mark." "Yes, I do." "You hate it when someone hurts one of your children, right?" "Yes." And then God says, "I hate that too." And at that moment, Mark Buchanan says he understood in the most visceral way and for the very first time in his life that he could not claim to love God and also hate his brother. They disconnect. You can't have both hate and love for God. Now think for a moment. It makes you angry when someone threatens to hurt your children or your grandchildren, right? Do you feel that same anger when children are hurt any place in the world? Do you feel that anger when a child is hurt just a block away? Do you feel that anger when somebody else's child is abused? Remember, Jesus said if we are to remain in Jesus' love, then we are to love others as He has loved us. So let me say it again. We love because Christ first loved us. And unless we have Christ's love in our hearts, we simply can't love others who are outside of our intimate circle. We simply don't have the power. We don't have the capability. I'm amused at a story in Ripley's, I'm going to close with this, in Ripley's Believe It or Not. And it's about a man who wrote the world's longest love letter. And it only had 3 words in each sentence. I love you. I love you. And it was written 1,875,000 times. Okay. Now, what's interesting is this man decided he wasn't going to write it himself, so he hired a secretary. And she wrote it. Okay? But what he did do, to keep a connection, he said the words, I love you, 1,750,000 times. And Ripley said, never was love made magnificent by as great an expenditure of time and effort as this. Well, it's a great story. I think Ripley was wrong. There was once a time when love was made manifest by a greater expenditure of effort than this Frenchman made. It was a time when the Son of God hung on a cross, on a hill, to show us what love really is by the one who once said, greater love has no one than this, than to lay down your life for a friend. The golden rule, as wonderful as it is insufficient for the task. We're not simply to do unto others as they would do unto us. We are not simply to do unto others as we would have them do unto us. But we are to do unto them as Christ has done unto us. We're to love as Christ has loved us. We're to show grace as Christ has shown the grace of God to us. And all God's children said, Amen.
Thank you again so much for joining us this morning. If you'd like more information about our services, please visit our website, which is FUMCMB.org, or call our church office at 843-448-7164. Thank you.